God created the world such that diligent labor exponentially multiplies fruit. God created the world such that diligent labor generally exponentially multiplies the fruit. That's what's loaded up into that blessing in the dominion mandate. Here's the blessing. You can be fruitful and multiply. As you are fruitful and multiply, you'll fill the earth. As you fill the earth, you're going to subdue it and rule over it. Okay? The blessing is one of diligent labor that exponentially multiplies. But here's the thing. The unbelieving heart sees God's grace as harsh. This is what the unfaithful servant says. He says, I knew thee, that thou art a hard man, or that could be translated harsh, reaping where thou hast not sown, and gathering where thou hast not strawed. In other words, the unfaithful servant says, I did the math and it doesn't add up, which is technically true. It's technically true because God made the world such that it exponentially increases. And so when faithful, diligent labor goes into the earth, you put a few seeds in the ground, what you get out of it is way more than you put what went into it. And so the unbelieving heart looks at that and says, wait, so think of Adam. Adam's sitting there, he's got his wife, and God says, here's the mission. I want you to fill the whole world with glory. And the unbelieving heart would say, that's impossible. And it looks at the master and says, that's harsh. That's unkind. You're asking us to put in this much, and you think we're going to get out that much? And the father says, yeah. God says, yes, that's how I made the world. I made the world where you put in a little bit of diligent labor and it multiplies. Exponentially multiplies. And so unbelief says, that's not fair. That's harsh. You're asking from us what we can't do. And God says, yeah. But the believing heart says, oh. The believing heart says, you're going to do that? And God the Father says, yeah. And the believing heart says, let's go. Right? The believing heart says, you mean I'm going to put in like this much and you're going to just brrr. And God says, yeah, just like that. Brrr. Right. That's fruitfulness. That's the universal sound of fruitfulness. Right? But so, you see? So he's technically right. The unbelieving servant's technically right. Yes. Does God reap way more than he sows? Yes. Every day of the week he does. Because he's God and because he made the world such that it multiplies. And so we put in a little bit of faithful, diligent labor and it multiplies exponentially. And believing hearts and minds and eyes look at that and say, what a deal. What an amazing deal. Everything we have is from his hand. And then God says, work with this faithfully and I'll multiply it even more and I'll give you even more. And the believing heart says, let's go. That's amazing. And the unbelieving heart says, wait. You want me to do what? The unbelieving heart sees that as God being harsh, expecting more than what I can put in. No, but that's grace. That's grace. Do you see that? It's grace. It doesn't add up. Believing diligence knows that fruitfulness rests on God's gracious blessing. It's because he made the world that way and because he loves his people that way. And that's what it means to know him in Jesus Christ. To know him in Jesus Christ is to know him that he comes for you with blessing. And what we're called to do is believe. What we're called to do is receive the blessing and say, this is crazy. We don't deserve this. You're so kind. Praise be to God.